Okay, continuing our discussion of the sugya, we left in your booklet on page 34, and we did question number 12. We left with your idea of why should it depend on the keys. We didn't discuss that, but today we're going to get into that now. So before we do that, if you go further in your notes on question number 12, so at this point, if you go back to the original question, which was somebody rents a house to his friend on the 14th of Nisan who has to do Bedika, so now we know the answer. The answer is, right, since he rented in the 14th of Nisan, then the landlord would have to check. And we know this, we know this because the rental took place already in the period of the 14th of Nisan. And the Gemara told us clearly that if he gave the keys before the 14th, then the tenant checks. But if he rented on the 14th and he gave the keys after the time of Bedika, then already is the landlord's obligation to check. So at this point, that's the Gemara's answer. Okay. We're going to go now to question 13. You look in Rashi, Dibur Amatchil Mesiras Amafteach. So Rashi is going to discuss for us why is it that it depends on the keys. So before we actually start the Rashi, just two or three, a couple of words. Number one, the word schirus is a rental, like socher. Number two, a dayan is from the word od, which means still. Then we have to know what a kinyan is. Probably you learned before that a kinyan comes from the word koneh, to acquire, which means that although an agreement is something that happens in your mind, in secular terms they call that meeting of the minds. When you and I reach a point where we agree to transfer something, to acquire something, to buy, to sell, to give something, that's called meeting of the minds, but that's all mental. In halacha, we're required that we demonstrate that agreement in a tangible, physical manner by doing an action, and that action is the kinyan. In order to make sure that it's not just a thought, it's not just a feeling, it's not like you kind of meant it, but that it's real, that it's serious, and that it's tangible. Therefore, we do an act. This act could be signing a document, or it could be lifting an object, or handing over an object, or maybe putting a fence around the field. In secular terms, we also have something similar, which is handshake. It's a common kinyan throughout the world. Allah also recognizes the validity of such a physical act. So a kinyan. We also have the word, these are examples such as akbar, lifting, and meshicha, pulling. Okay, so now Rashi explains what's the significance of giving the key, why does it depend, why does the obligation of checking depend on who has the keys at the moment of Bedika. Explains Rashi, Mesiras Amafteach, hu kinyan aschirus, because handing over the keys is a form of acquiring a rental. And therefore, imat shelo masar amafteach nichnas leil arba asar, if the 14th started before he gave over the keys, then chala chovas habedika ala maskir, the obligation of checking falls on the landlord. She'adayan aita b'rishuto, because that means that the rental or the domain is still in his reshut, in his control. He didn't finalize the kinyan, so at the moment of Bedika, he's in control. And even though he gives the keys over later on, the next morning, or even late at night, the obligation already falls on him. So the point of Rashi is that we mentioned before, that the obligation of Bedika falls on the beginning of the night of the 14th, and at that moment it's critical who has the keys, because that determines who has the control of the domain. So if I give the keys before the 14th, then the tenant steps in and he has the obligation. But on the other hand, if the landlord did not finalize the deal till later on the 14th, the next morning, for example, so at the beginning of the night of 14th, he had the keys, so he's in control, therefore it's his obligation. So at this point, you can write in your notes in bottom of page 34, question number 1, why does it depend on the Mesiras HaMafteach? Well, now we know, because that's what finalizes the kinyan, the deal. when Rashi says Shadayin Aita B'Rishuto, that it's still in his domain, what was his Rishuto? That's the rental. What he has control over is the rental, the rights to the house. In whose Rishut? In the landlord, because he did not give the keys yet. And that's the answer to number 3. Why is it in his Rishut? Because he has not given the keys over yet to the tenant. Even if they spoke about the price and all that, but they have not finalized the deal. And finally, number 4, what is the halacha in that case? Well, since the landlord has the keys at the beginning of the night, he did not transfer ownership, then he has to do the bedika.